back to Daybreak, the show that brings you what you need to think about as we begin the day. This is the time that we'll be talking to the Director General of the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, that is Zachary Mwangi. He's already in studio. We'll be talking about matters, the national census that is coming up next month. But first, to begin with the breaking news or developing news this morning of Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, Henry Rotich, alongside Principal Secretary Kamau Thugen and several others who have been taken to Milimani locals. They're expected to face several charges, 8 of them in number, including abuse of office and engaging in a public project without prior planning. Kimani Mbugua is at the Milimani locals, and Kimani, you've been tracking these suspects since morning, since you got to Muthaiga police station, then Pangani police station. What have you been able to see, and what should we now expect as they wait for their time in court, which should be opening at about 8 o'clock?
Well, good morning, Sam. As of this morning, the latest information is that we got to Muthaiga police station at 6:15, 6:15 in the morning, where the CS for Treasury, Henry Rotich, and the PS, Kamau Thugen, were still being held. As I told you earlier, that was a time when the family and friends were still there, bringing them clothes to change and food. They had stayed there overnight. And we waited, and at around 7 o'clock, that is when the convoy came out of Muthaiga police station, and they were put in one of those vehicles over there that's behind me. They had to use a few suspects, about 10 or more than 10 suspects who were expected to be arraigned so far. The white van you can see over there, that is the one that has just brought them in. So the van left Muthaiga police station and went straight to Pangani police station, where more suspects were put in that particular vehicle. And it has been followed by a convoy of DCI vehicles and DCI detectives, who we have followed all the way to the Milimani law courts, and now they have just been put at the Milimani law court cells under waiting for the courts to open. And now from then, we'll expect the court proceedings to start, as the rest of them are being rounded up. We're not sure. They say some of them are coming from Eldoret, so but we haven't seen those. But the ones who have just been brought in, including the CS and the PS, are inside. They are now currently inside the cells in Milimani law courts, waiting for the courts to open and the court process to start up.
Okay, all right. So, Kimani Mbuga, please stick there for us, the Milimani law courts, to bring us those pictures and reports from there. But now, back in studio, we speak to Zachary Mwangi, the Director General of the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Right, and let's begin with there is this information that you've given us that the census will be on the 9th of 24th, 25th. Exactly explain to us what is going to happen on that night and what should we do on the day preceding that is on 24th.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the studio. Census is a process, population and housing census. We started way back in 2015 in the planning stage. Census normally have got 3 stages. There is the planning stage, or what we call the pre-enumeration, before the count. Then there is the enumeration phase, and then there is the post-enumeration. In the planning phase, the pre-enumeration, the major activity is normally what we call the cartographic mapping. You map the country into small areas. Then after that, you do the recruitment, you train, you do a pilot census.
Right.
Then you go to the main enumeration phase. That is when we're talking about the night of the 24th, 25th. So we have a team that we are currently training, the census team, that will go to do the actual enumeration. They'll visit each and every household in this country to ensure that everybody is counted. The key important thing to note is that the census night, or the reference night as we call it, is 24th, 25th night. So we will go to the households and count the number of persons who would have spent that night in that particular household.
You go to all the households?
We go to all the households. If we do not manage to complete all the households on that night, we then have an opportunity for the next 7 days.
Okay.
But we'll be making reference to that night. Then when we go...
What exactly do you mean that you'll be making reference to that night?
It means that if we are to go on 25th, for example, or 26th, we'll be asking the members or the most responsible member of that household how many people did spend the night of the 24th, 25th in this household. Why
is that important?
That is very important in that how do you define a census, a population and housing census, for example? It is the complete count of the population at a specific period, and that is the key, specific period within the boundary of the country.
Right.
So you need to tie it to a specific period, and the specific period now is the reference night, the 24th, 25th night.
Okay. All right. So let's get back to the point that I asked you. During the day on 24th, what are we supposed to do? We as the Kenyans will be counted on that night.
Yeah, what we are calling about the Kenyans is to support our team that is going to come to your household. First, welcome our census team, then to give them the information that they would require, because we are going to administer or to ask many questions. And we require the Kenyans to give us accurate information which will help in the planning and the development process of this country.
Do we all need to be home?
We need to be home, but even if we are not at home, what would happen is that we'll count everybody within the boundaries of this country, because we have different homes. For example, we have what we call conventional households. That is the people who are in a particular compound, for example, have the same cooking arrangement, for example, and are answerable to a head of a household, for example. Then we have the non-conventional. We do the total count, even those people who are not at home. People who are in hotels, in lodges, will also be enumerated.
You go to those
people,
facilities.
Yes. People even who are on transit will also be enumerated. So people in school, people in prisons, we do the complete count of each and every Kenyan.
No, wait a minute. So if someone is traveling from Nairobi to Eldoret, how will you count them? Or are you going to count them based on who is at their home?
No. What we do is make arrangement that we go to the bus stations, for example. Then we count them. Then we give them cards to show that they have been enumerated or they have been counted. Yes.
So how correct or precise is the data you collect, bearing in mind that there are actually some people that you'll ultimately not get at the end of the day?
The bottom line is to ensure that we have a complete coverage, a complete count. And that's why we have a period of 7 days to do the actual enumeration. And after that period, then we'll have like a toll-free line where now somebody who has not been counted, for example, would then make a call and request to be counted.
Okay, I'll get back to the details that we'll be looking for during the enumeration, but I want us to focus first on the kind of issues that you'll be looking for in as far as carrying out these exercises concerned. If we can have those details in terms of the enumerators that are required, 127,000. Of course, we get that slide later on, but you need 127,000 enumerators, if I'm not mistaken. Then for supervisors, are they about 27,000? And then you have 2,700 ICT officers. There has been concern about the applicants, especially for the positions of enumerators and supervisors. First of all, who is qualified to get that job now that the application window already closed?
Yeah, that's correct. The recruitment process was done at the county level. We have the county census committees that are headed by the county commissioners with representation of various state and non-state actors. And we did give them guidelines on how to do the recruitment. The personnel that we do require would be is 125,000 for the enumerators, but we also have 10,000 for the special population, which I had mentioned. Then we have 27,000 content supervisors.
Yes.
Then 2,700 ICT supervisors. What you note is that we are now doing a digital census. We are using mobile devices to do the actual enumeration. So we are doing a paperless census. So that's why we require people who have got expertise in ICT. So the recruitment process was done at that level because we need people who come from those localities.
Okay.
The enumerators, for example. So what has happened is that enumerators have been recruited at the county level, at that level where they are supposed to provide.
Are there any age specifications or academic qualification that you are looking for?
The age specification was not there, but the academic qualification, particularly for the enumerators, was somebody with a C plus. Yeah. C.
I asked that because there has been a concern, especially among university students, who are saying that we're the ones who need these jobs, yet we end up finding that some public servants are coming to apply for those jobs and probably being given. What is the clarity on this?
The clarity is that I had mentioned that the recruitment has been done at that level, and what we observed was also that there were so many applicants for those positions also, you know.
How many?
I can't specify the actual numbers, but in some of the stations or in some of the counties, you could see very many numbers of applicants. So the counties' recruitment committees had that criteria of recruiting at that level. Yeah, so the applicants were very many, but we tried as much as possible to ensure that the youth, unemployed youth, get the enumerators jobs.
Okay, so is there a case of public servants who've been accorded that job, or some people working with the private sector that have actually gotten that opportunity?
Yeah, we could have some who had, particularly for the supervisors, yeah, and for the ICT supervisors, some would have got that job. So what was because there was no restriction that for the other jobs we did encourage the county census committee to ensure that they give preference to the unemployed youth, particularly for the enumerators jobs.
Okay.
Yes.
And how much will an enumerator earn?
An enumerator would earn 1,500 shillings per day for 16 days. Yes.
Okay, all right. So that's about 16 plus 8 is 24,000.
Yes.
And for supervisors?
The content supervisors would earn 2,500.
How many days?
For 27 days.
27. Okay.
And an ICT supervisor would earn 3,000 shillings for a similar period.
Okay, so that's about 67,000 for supervisors and ICT officers. So let's get to the point. Of course, we're still bringing you the news that are just developing this morning, that the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, Henry Rotich, alongside Principal Secretary Kamau Thuge, are currently being held at the Milimani Law Court's police cells, where they are waiting to be arraigned as soon as the courtroom opens, in the case that was announced yesterday by the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nuruddin Haji, indicating that they have a case to answer in regards to the construction of Arol and Kimorel dams, of course, that was said should have been costed at 46 billion shillings, but apparently the National Treasury raised that to 63 billion shillings and went ahead to secure some financing for it. Already 20 billion shillings had already, or rather had been paid in regards to that, including certain amounts. I believe 11 billion shillings for insurance, and 4 billion shillings had been taken in form of a loan to service the interest, of which that the country continues to pay for in form of a loan. So we'll be sure to bring you the details. Given Mbugo's own location, he'll be looking into that. So let's get back to the conversation about the national census, population and housing census that we talk about. And I remember in the year 2009, there was certain concern about the details that you were looking for from Kenyans. Maybe could begin with specifics on what kind of information will be taken from Kenyans on starting 24th. Okay.
The census is, we look at the demographic details and demographic characteristics of the Kenyans. So we'll be looking at the details like the age of the Kenyans, their sex, their marital status. We will also be interested in looking at details of people with difficulties in performing their activities. We'll also be looking at details about
disability or
disability.
Something? Okay.
Then we'll also be looking at the education, the attainment levels, for example. Details to do with the labor force. That is the occupation, the industry people are employed with the number of employers, for example, the hours that are worked.
Right.
We'll also be looking at details to do with the ICT, the ownership and the access of ICT, details to do with the agriculture, that is crop farming, livestock rearing, aquaculture. We'll also, because the population and housing census, we look at the housing characteristics.
Okay. What is that? Housing characteristics? The
housing characteristics, you do look at how many, maybe if I come to your place, I would ask you about the number of habitable rooms, the dwelling units that are there. Then I look at the roof, I look at the floor, so that we look at, the characteristics about where Kenyans live, because that is very important to know how Kenyans are living. Yes.
So when you get that information, link us with the planning aspect and development aspect of government. How does that information really inspire government policy, ultimately?
Yeah, for planning purposes and planning and development purposes, first you need to know how many are we as Kenyans. Then you want also to know our characteristics. The age group, for example. A typical case is an example about you want a project to do with education. For example, you want to start, the government want to start a school, for example. Basic information about the age group of the school-going children, for example. You'll get that information from the information that we are collecting, for example.
But the characteristics of a house,
the characteristics of a house,
the nature of the roof, how does that inspire planning?
That does inspire a lot of planning, because you want to know where Kenyans live. The Kenyans that are in the informal sector, the Kenyans that are in the formal sector. And you see, like now we have the Big Four agenda, and one of the agenda is on the housing, for example. So you require to know from a planning perspective or from a policy perspective, how many houses would you require for the Kenyan population.
Okay, we'll get back to the Big Four agenda, because you mentioned it just there. But in 2009, one of the concerns was that Kenyans did not want to declare the ethnicity. Is it a factor this time that you're looking for?
Yes, and consistently we have been having that question on ethnicity in all our censuses from 1969. And
you still think it's important?
It is important. And the good thing is about census undertaking is a technical process. And it is a very well guided process, because we have the UN recommendations and principles of undertaking a census. And there are basic questions that countries are recommended for countries to ask. So and ethnicity is one of it. And it shows the diversity. If you look at it from a very positive point of view, it is a good question to be asked. Yes.
So assuming that you come from a mixed ethnicity, your parents are from different ethnicities, I mean, which box do you tick now?
Yeah, the good thing is that we have options. You can talk about Kenyans. Even there are some people who feel passionately that they don't want to be associated with any particular ethnic group. And in our option, one of the options is you can take Kenyan, that I'm a Kenyan.
Wouldn't that be misleading then? You do not achieve what you are looking out for if it's about how many, let's say, Luyas there are in the country?
No, because after the analysis will show the ones that would have declared or would have refused to do that. But it is also good, will show the others who have declared their ethnic status. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's take a look at what Kenyans have been saying on Twitter in regards to the feedback as soon as we told them that you're coming to studio. This is Gabriel Malwa. It says that we are at least 50 million Kenyans. We need billions for census. Why would it take millions to count one Kenyan? All right. We'll respond to that on the cost of the census. Next is Andrew Wesonga. We had interviews till now. We don't know if we have been recruited. Kuna ofisadi ya manini. That's about someone who is looking for a job to become an enumerator or a supervisor. I think we begin with that. Have we concluded the recruitment process before we can come to the other question?
Okay. The recruitment process has been concluded. And what we are doing currently is that the census the County Census Committee now are communicating to the successful applicants. So the process is ongoing, and we are starting now with the ICT supervisors, because the ICT supervisors are the ones that are next in line for the training, because their training would start on the 26th of this month, that is Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, then after that, we get the content supervisors.
Okay.
Yes.
And the question about the cost, we have had a figure of 18 billion shillings being spent on this census. Some Kenyans feel it's pretty expensive. Why is it so?
Yeah, but if you look at it and you look at the cost and say that this is spread over a period of 5 years since we started the process. I had said that the census process have got 3 phases. During the planning phase, for example, you map the whole country. Okay. Again, a big expense is used on that, because you have to deploy a lot of people to do that actual work. Then you look at the actual enumeration phase, when you're doing the actual count. Again, you're going to deploy more than 150,000 staff. Then if you include the other elements of the village elders, for example, you include the issue of security, that number is a massive number. If you add up the issue of the logistics, the cost would be to the near, it would be like 10 billion, for example. Then after that, now the data analysis. So we see that the cost of the census is reasonable. And again, there is a shift that we are not doing a paper census. Okay. We are also procuring mobile devices. Mobile devices are being assembled in the country.
Is it more expensive or cheaper?
The initial cost is a bit expensive than the paper. Yes.
Is there a chance of continuous census so that you don't have to do it every 10 years, or is there any justification for doing it every 10 years? Because I mean, you're able to tell if someone dies, you register death. If someone is born, you register the birth. Someone gets married, you register marriage. Is there a possibility of the systems of government working together so that you don't have to do this tedious exercise every 10 years?
Yes. But the recommendation is that countries should do censuses after every 10 years, because it's more detailed than, because you get more information than the information about the people who have been registered, people who have been born, people who have died, for example. But in countries where we have very efficient registration systems, where everybody who is born is registered, the registration system, everybody in school, the address system is perfect. You see, you can eventually not do a census, but you're required to do a census after a period of time, because you'll get more comprehensive information. Okay.
All right. So as we begin to wind up, there's the question of the Big Four agenda. And you've been in this country and you've seen the challenges that people are facing in terms of health. Like, for instance, the case of cancer becoming quite a pandemic in the country. In the census, will you be looking at these chronic situations, or will it be a subject of another national exercise?
Okay. In the census, we do not go into the details about the causes of death, for example, but we'll get details about the mortality. And one of the things that we normally establish from a census is the infant mortality, the mortality rates. Okay. But also we have a very good registration system from the Ministry of Health, and we normally report about the morbidity. So we normally report on an annual basis through our economic survey about the major causes of death in this country, and cancer being among the top 3. Yeah.
So even as you report on that, so from KNBS point of view, because I believe you're the primary source of data in this country, so how do you support the Big Four agenda specifically on health, on matters, chronic illnesses, diabetes, HIV and AIDS, cancer, and so many others that are really troubling the population? How do you help the government agencies to plan on this in terms of data support?
We work very closely with the Ministry of Health and with also other agencies in filling in the data gaps so that we can help them in their planning and development processes. The Ministry of Health, for example, we've worked very, very closely in terms of doing various surveys with the Ministry of Health. The HIV surveys, for example, we've done those surveys with them. And the non-commutable diseases also. So it is our role is to ensure that we provide data so that the policymakers, the users of data, can make use of the data to make informed decisions.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. Zachary Mwangi, the Director General of the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. We still want to take you back to the story that is developing this morning that is to do with the Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich and the Principal Secretary at the Ministry of National Treasury, that is Kamau Thuge. These are earlier pictures as they were taken from Thaiga police Station to Milimani Lokots via Pangani Police Station, where they also picked a few other suspects who were held there overnight, of course, being taken to the Milimani Lokots, where they expected to face those charges as soon as the courtroom opens. I just wanted to take a look at the other persons that have been are wanted by the DPP, of course, after that statement that he gave yesterday in as far as that case is concerned. Aurora Kimorel, a project that was quoted as 63 billion shillings by the National Treasury, despite an assessment that it should have been about 46 billion shillings, so saying that it was exaggerated at a level of 17 billion shillings. So those are some of the allegations. I mean, the charges that they'll be facing include abuse of office, engaging in a project without prior planning. Of course, they will be having to be subjected to various laws to do with the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act of 2003, the Penal Code, as well as the law to do with matters public procurement, Public Finance Management Act, that they will be charged in accordance. That is, they'll be facing 8 counts, of course, a different level depending on the level of involvement. So those are just the earlier pictures that we had of the convoy making its way to the court, that is at the Milimani Law Courts, and obviously we'll be sure to bring you the details as soon as that court process begins. So thank you so much, Zachary Mwangi from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, of course, as we prepare for that national enumeration. I don't know whether you have any final word.
Yeah, my final word is for the Kenyans to support the process. We are counting our people for sustainable development and the devolution of our services. So we require to have accurate count so that we get information that will inform the decision process, making process.
Okay.
So we say jitokeze uhesabike.
Jitokeze uhesabike, and that's the point that we leave it. One who's Willis Raburu will be here with Engage. He'll be with his panelists to talk about matters that are affecting you socially, but of course also to update you on what will be happening at the Milimani Law Courts. Kimani Mbugua is there. He'll be sure to bring us details as soon as the court process against Principal Secretary and Cabinet Secretary National Treasury begins. So stay tuned. Back in a moment.